Hey, this is Derek Murphy of creativity.com. I'm going to make a video about cover design, but also about book launching and the importance of getting the right elements on the cover. I'm going to talk about my mistakes and some of the things I'm preparing to rectify before we launch a book in the next couple days, I think. So this is the cover that I started out with. I worked for a really long time on it. I spent a lot of time getting all the details, and it's pretty, and I like it a lot, but that's kind of the problem. I say in other places that if you design your own cover, one of the dangers is that you're going to like it too much, and then you're not going to listen to feedback if it's not working, or change to something new because you've spent so much time on it. And that's something I want to avoid, especially because I know this cover has problems, and I'm going to talk about what those are. So because I really like this book and I've worked on editing it for a long time, I know the whole story. So I wanted to put the story on the cover, which is also one of the mistakes that you don't want to do, because the readers haven't read it yet. They don't know or care about what happens in the book. So all the details and stuff don't really have to be there. So she has a book, she has a flaming sword, there's a flying kingdom in the background, and there's this kind of dystopian setting down here. And it's a little tricky because this is cross-genre. So this is kind of like a far future dystopian fantasy, which is an okay genre if you hit it well, but it's a much smaller genre. And of course, you're going to confuse all the details. So I have this flying city, the color scheme, I have a big fantasy font here. I originally just wanted to call this The Source, but for keywords it works better to be The Source of Magic, but I kind of squeezed in the title down here, so there's not a great balance between the author name and this smaller subtext. But the other problem is that even though like close up there's a lot of good stuff and it's pretty, most people aren't going to look at it close up. So this is it on Amazon, and it looks kind of okay. It just doesn't really have the power or the immediate impact, and it's also not exactly clear. I mean, obviously it looks like some kind of magic fantasy, but it's not obviously an Academy cover. So that's one of the big problems, because right now academies are doing really well. There's a big readership for Academy, and those are mostly urban fantasies, and this isn't really an urban fantasy book. So when I got some pushback on this cover, my first response was, well, I don't want to attract the wrong audience. I don't want to make it look more Academy if it's going to attract the wrong readers and they're not going to like it, which is true to an extent. However, you want everything to work as well as possible with as little effort. So what we've done with this launch, we have book 2 up already, and book 3 even is on pre-order, but they stopped allowing you to link a pre-order book in the series pretty recently. This is mid 2019. So usually I have very slow launches, usually like 1 year apart between my books. So I've never really been able to invest in ads the way that I would like to with a launch. But if you have a book 1 and a book 2 that's out immediately, this book I just finished writing or co-writing. I have a co-writer who did the first draft, and then I worked on the second draft. So together we've probably written about half-half. And we probably would do better launching this at full price at like $3.99, because then we could spend more on ads, because they're both in Kindle Unlimited and these are longer books, like 90,000 words. So we'll probably earn well as long as we can keep it ranking high. So generally the launch strategy is just to spend a lot of money on ads and then hope it earns back. But the danger is it's risky to spend a lot of money on ads. If it doesn't convert well, we're going to lose money, and potentially a significant amount of money. So that's something we really need to watch out for. So anything that we can do with the cover, I already think that the blurb is like okay, but not as good as it could be, which is going to hurt us. So whatever we could do on the cover, this is the biggest place where we could win and have a much bigger advantage. And you can see down here as a thumbnail, you don't really see very much. All the details are a bit too small. It's not super clear. The colors are still pretty, which is really important, but it doesn't really look like an Academy series. And even though, like I said, most Academies are urban fantasy, this isn't really a typical Academy book. It still has the Academy element. Hopefully it would still appeal to the right readers. We don't want to miss out on that trend completely by missing the mark when it comes to the cover design. So today I went back and I basically just replaced the background. I made the main character a little bit larger, and I changed the fonts to make them a little cleaner and sharper. And so now it looks kind of like this. So this is one of my options. I changed the hair to red. Before it was all like there was a little bit of pink. With Academy covers, what works really well is purple and blue for a lot of the Academy covers. Sometimes it's a blue cover with like just the fire or just the lighting is yellow, and that can work really well too. So in my Photoshop panel over here, I've got a bunch of color layers that I could play around with to just fix basically the coloring and play around with different versions. I could also flip, this is just a gradient map back here. So if I wanted to, I could just flip it so that the purple is on top or the blue is on top by going to reverse. So you can see it's pretty easy to change colors. I could also change the color of the dress if I wanted to. One of the problems with this cover is that there's just too many colors going on. It's probably better to just stick with one color scheme. You can also see I added a little logo down here. It's probably pretty important for Academy books to have a little crest or logo. That's pretty common. And I took a lot of the stuff that I liked from the first cover. I just made it a little clearer and more obvious. I actually really like the cover for book 2 of this series, which looks a little more like this. This is one of my favorite covers, but again, the problem with designing your own covers and adding too many details is that it may not have that immediate impact. So I still really like these covers, but I want to be prepared if it's not converting as well as it should be, then I need to be prepared with something that's a little more obvious with less detail that stands out a little stronger. And I could even theoretically keep a cover like this for book 2, as long as the girl kind of matches the girl in the first book. I might still get away with keeping the floating kingdom and the trees and stuff, but it's really important that I get them to read the first book no matter what. The covers for the second book or the third book, they don't matter quite so much, although you do want to kind of project a uniform feel or style. I also tried changing out the background a little bit, so I'll show you quickly. These are a few of the different versions that aren't completely clean yet, but these are kind of just different options for a style or a series branding that, even though I really like the first cover, these are a little bit more obviously Academy and actually will probably sell better if we use one of these. I'm not totally sure on the colors and stuff yet, but I think these are pretty strong covers. However, I'm still missing a lot of things that make Academy covers what they are. So, for example, the girl doesn't have a uniform. Usually there'll be a little bit of magic or a glow around the figure, and this crest could be a lot bigger. So I kind of added a couple of the Academy elements, but you never really want to go half-assed with cover design. I see a lot of people talking about how they want their cover to be different, how they want their cover to stand out, and how they dislike that all the best-selling covers in a certain genre look the same. So there's a reason that is. There's a reason why it's better to go obvious and to hit all the right things than it is to have something that's different and stands out, because a confused reader won't buy the book. So what I'm going to try to do is actually go a step further, get rid of this girl in the dress altogether. And like I said earlier, I'm reluctant to do that because this is more of a fantasy. And if I just put her in a uniform, there's the danger that it'll just look like every other Academy book, and that I'll attract the wrong reader. But there's the opportunity that it will also sell a lot better. So if I double my sales, even if I get some of the wrong readers in, but I'm getting a lot more visibility with no ad spent just by switching the cover design, obviously that's worth doing. So I'm going to start with what I have, and I'm going to make a different version where I try to add even more of the kind of Academy tropes and see if I can make my cover as obvious as possible. So I spent some time and kind of photoshopped together a new body with a uniform. It's not perfect. I think the dimensions are a little bit off, and it's not very clean. Probably needs some more cleaning, but it kind of gives you an idea of what looks like an Academy cover. But the colors are still off. I like this pink and green. I think it looks really good, but there's too many colors. The text kind of gets lost in the details. So I might take a minute and play around mostly just with the colors. And one of the things that's kind of fun that I can do is just take this uniform layer and really quickly go up to image adjustments, hue saturation, and I can just change the colors of the dress. I might also go up here and try to change the tie a little bit to match. And then it'd be nice to have a little bit of glow around the figure. The easy way to do that is usually to take some kind of smoke. That's not great, but it's something, and I'm going to go down again to my colors. I'm going to leave the red here, but for now it stands out a little bit better. Actually, it should really be like a pink to match your hair. The other thing it really needs for an Academy cover is a really big iron gate of some kind. So I tried adding in some other elements and changed the colors a bit. I'm not happy with it as it is. It's really pretty messy still. It needs a lot of color and glow around the figure. But I'm just going to talk about one other thing, which is right now I have the title, which is Source of Magic, which is fine. But if I really want to focus on hitting the Academy market, I could actually swap the subtitle and the title. So that would leave me something like this. This isn't a finished cover. This is just kind of an idea of how you could go from one version. This was the original that I had originally, which doesn't quite hit the genre, to something like this, which actually is pretty fitting for the Academy genre. It needs some work. It needs to be cleaned up. I'm not sure that I'll actually use this because, like I said, I don't really want to attract too much of the wrong audience. Generally, this kind of cover would be darker, maybe more new adult, maybe more romance, and mine's really more young adult epic fantasy. But even so, it's really important to try to get as many of the genre considerations, conventions as you can in book cover design. So I hope this helps a little bit. We're still finalizing the covers and we'll probably test a few things out to see which one actually sells. Hope this helps. Thanks. Bye-bye.